everybody. Here we are continuing our ENCORE Education Series that we like to do and get out there to people. And so you've got myself, Andy Bassett, president of Ellerbrock-Norris, on the call. You've got Elliot Bassett, our chief operating officer at Ellerbrock-Norris. He's waving on the video here as well. And I'll introduce Dan in just a second, Dan Allison. But what we're going to go through, this is going to be a series of videos that we're going to go over, and they're designed around business planning, kind of, how to think about the future of your business, whatever those plans might be. Also connect it with how do we grow our businesses today to get to achieve whatever those plans are in the future, right? And so anyway, there'll be a series that we'll go through, but today is going to be really about that growth focus. And I think many of us as business owners realize one of the best ways we can grow our companies is by tapping into the resource of our current clients through referrals. And so we're going to spend some time discussing that today. And as I mentioned, I was going to introduce Dan Allison. So this is Dan's world. Dan is the founder and president of the Feedback Marketing Group, which is a consulting firm that's helped large organizations and individuals and professionals implement systems to duplicate their top clients and attract more quality prospects and clients. So it's exactly that. Dan's world is referrals, is helping companies figure out how do we generate the right business in our organization through referrals. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Dan, what else would you like to add to that? I'm going to turn it over to you to say hi to the audience.
Well, hello. Yeah, I would note for the call that I'm the only person without the last name Bassett on the call. It's an honor. It's an honor to blend into such a tight circle of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like you said, Dan Allison, I founded the Feedback Marketing Group about 17 years ago. During that time, we have been obsessed with this one topic, trying to learn how do business owners, regardless of what industry they're in, if you ask them how they want to grow, there's no growth strategy better than having clients that are so happy they're out talking to other people about your service, your product, whatever it is. So we've spent 17 years researching, interviewing thousands and thousands of consumers about why do they do it and why don't they do it. And then we've turned around and taught businesses how to engage their clients a little bit differently, but in a way that will lead to significantly more advocacy, more referral business, essentially studying the psychology of referring.
Awesome. Yeah, which is definitely something that it's an approach that, we have never seen. And so we have obviously been using your approach for a while, and it has led to a lot of success. So we thought it'd be good to get that message out to our clients and whoever we're talking to. So just to start, Dan, you have a deep history in being a business owner and in growing businesses. So do you want to maybe just give us a background on you as a business owner and kind of how you got to today, more than what you just went through? Yeah,
kind of Cliff Notes version. All my formal education is clinical and behavioral psychology. And during graduate school, I started an organization that helped kids who had schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, autism, and we had facilities where those kids lived and received treatment for the issues that they had. My partner and I were lucky we started it. We were employee number 1 and number 2, and like most business owners, right? But within, I think, of about 4 or 5 years, we ended up with several hundred employees and about 70 locations, and grew a pretty large organization before selling it. And I bring that up not to impress anybody with the scale of it, but because we grew that company through referral. We did not have an ad budget. You can imagine in the mental health field, it's kind of hard to put up a billboard that makes your phone ring. So advertising isn't very traditional. But we built everything utilizing the same strategies I teach everybody about how to turn clients into raving fan advocates for your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So maybe then talk about how it was that you started looking at how business owners can get more referral business for their clients outside of your own personal business. This kind of how you got into that.
Yeah. So my partner and I had an opportunity in our 5th year to sell the company. And it was one of those offers you couldn't refuse type of deal. Big national company did not have a strong presence in the Midwest, and we dominated the Midwest. So it was a a great deal. I was 27 years old at that point, so I couldn't believe, my first foray into business turned out to be that lightning in a bottle type of scenario. We sold the company. My partner retired, but we had agreed to a 5-year non-compete clause, so I could not be in that industry in any way, shape, or form for 5 years anywhere in the country. So I ended up buying a few organizations in a lot of different industries. So I was in the finance industry. I had a mortgage bank. I had a real estate company. And I looked at all the different companies that I invested in and what their strategy was for growth. And they all had ad budgets. They all put money in the newspaper back then and magazines and all this stuff. But the other thing I noticed was that they had all built their company to where they had these massive client bases already. They already had all these people that said yes, bought products or services from them. And when I looked at all their growth strategies, each company CEO, I would ask, what's your strategy to engage your client base in helping you grow the business? What is your process? And the answer across the board was consistent. And that was, we don't have one. So it was funny, they were willing to spend all this money to communicate with the public, yet they had these armies of clients and they were not engaging them effectively. So that is something I decided, Elliot, that I want to focus on trying to understand behaviorally. Why do clients refer? What does it take to get somebody to have such a good experience with your company that they feel compelled to tell other people about it? So I began 17 years ago, really getting our own clients together and conducting focus groups to learn from their perspective about that topics, really studying the behavior. You can read all kinds of books on this stuff, but I thought, why not just go to the people directly that we're hoping behave that way and learn why they're not doing it today.
Yeah, so
Go ahead,
sorry, Andy, as a follow-up to that, what if you asked pretty much any salesperson out there, and probably anybody that either manages salespeople or owns a company that is in sales, they would agree that referrals are probably the best way to grow their business. But we all know that very rarely happens in the grand scheme of like you said, marketing strategies and all of that. What do you think causes that? What do you think the obstacles that stand in front of people of having a strategy around referrals? What is that? Because I don't know that anybody could probably put a finger on it if you asked them.
Yeah, it's interesting because if I ask every single company, what if you could choose one way to grow, what would you do? They'd say, show up to work and have my voicemail full of referral business, right? It's free. Your close rate is high when those people come in because somebody that has influence over them already endorsed you, all those things. But when you get to strategy, even one of the things I do with all the clients I take on is I role play and I say, I'm going to be a client. I want to hear you ask me for referrals. And if you want to see somebody get so awkward and uncomfortable, make them do it. And I think what it is, Elliot, psychologically, we've got this perception in our head that talking about referrals or asking about it is selfish. So, you work so hard to get this client, build a relationship, bring them value, and now I'm going to turn it around and make it selfish and make it about me. And they're not willing to do that. So, but what we found in the years of research is that paradigm is wrong, right? So I'll give you an example from a client I worked with this morning. Their method of talking about referrals was, we need your help to grow our business. I mean, that's the kind of stuff they'd say. And so we'd like the names and numbers of it. And the CEO, I said, well, that's a great strategy. How often do you think that actually happens when your team members are in front of clients? And he said, never. I said, okay, so in theory, it's good, but it's not good because it's selfish. I need, desperate, your help, not your job, right? To grow my business. Like, that's not my problem, that's your problem. When the reality is that what actually motivates clients, and again, we've interviewed clients in all 50 states in North America. We've interviewed throughout Canada. We were just in Asia and Australia last year, Europe. We've interviewed every industry. And when I ask clients who have referred a company why they do it, it's never because they desperately wanted to help the business grow. it's always because somebody that was important to them had a need for the service. So when you think about this paradigm of, oh, talking about referrals is about me and being selfish, all you have to do is change that paradigm and number one, believe that you deliver something of value to people. Otherwise, nothing else matters, right? But when you make it about them and being helpful to people that they care about, not about me and growing my business, and that, you know, the greatest compliment you can give me is a referral. Your clients aren't trying to compliment you. That's not their job. It becomes way easier, and it eliminates that negative stereotype people have of the topic.
Yeah, that's interesting. My original question was actually going to be very similar to Elliot's, and kind of maybe not as much as what works, you know, because everybody's looking for the guarantee or the crystal ball that's gonna make the referrals come to them. But it was more, and I think he already answered it, but if there's anything to add, it was more around what interests me is that behavioral science as to what keeps people from wanting to refer clients or prospective clients to you. And I think you might have answered it primarily in how we're approaching or how we're asking. Is there, outside of that, is there maybe another major barrier you see in the traditional business relationships that just keep that from happening, even when it's being asked?
Yeah, so one of the questions actually, so you look at the business owner or salespeople or their perspective of talking about it. And that just summarizes they're completely uncomfortable with the idea of looking desperate and salesy and getting rejected and all those ugly things they think might happen if they say those weird things. But our firm, one of the questions we ask all the thousands of people we've interviewed, so I ask every client I've ever met, why don't you refer this company to more people? So like when you look at a firm like Ellerbrock-Norris and the size of your firm. I mean, you're no small firm, right? And if a lot of companies, I'll say, how many clients do you have? And they say 1,000. And I'll say, how many referrals came through your door last year that became clients? And they'll say 60. And I'll ask, why do you think that 940 people chose you for such an important service, but told nobody about you in the last 12 months? Why do you think 960 people who are surrounded by people just like them didn't tell any of those people? And when they think about it, they get frustrated. So one of the questions I've asked every client, from their perspective, why aren't you more active in referring? Why don't you refer? And we hear the same kind of 7 responses and conversations every time we ask, no matter what industry we ask in. We hear the same things over and over and over again, which we find, and the way I summarize it, Andy, is rarely do I have a company where I interview their client base and they have a shortage of clients that are willing to refer. Normally, there is no shortage of people that say, I like this company enough that I would definitely tell other people about it. What they normally have, though, when I dig deeper, is they have clients that are willing but not capable of referring. They don't have a lot of the most critical pieces of information that are necessary for me to convince Andy to go use this company. I turn into a sales guy now. I've got to convince you to go do that, and they're not equipped to do those things.
So that's interesting, and without giving away any of the secret sauce here necessarily, but an exercise that we went through with our risk advisor team, our sales team, that I thought was very interesting, I think kind of aligns with this, is where you had us kind of take our top client, each of us individually, think about the top relationships we have with our clients, and we kind of ranked them as far as how well, you know, how good of a relationship do you have with them, 1 through 10, you know, type of deal. And then we worked our way down to, okay, how much do they actually know everything you're capable of doing for them? How much, and we walked all the way down to the likelihood they are to refer you and getting to the point of how you, and it was interesting to me, and I know I'm not hitting exactly that sequence in order, but it was interesting how, you know, our top relationships, we ranked them, you know, 10s. But by the time we got down to this, how much they know about everything our organization's capable of doing for them and on their behalf, and then how much they could articulate that to a person that we would like to do business with, our referral, our scores went way down. Yeah. Interesting exercise. I don't know if that's something you want to talk about a little bit, because it's certainly, for me, hit home with the, I don't know if it's mentality, but just the standard operating of all of us in the sales space that struggle with that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that the easiest way to cover that is to answer, what are those top 7 responses when I ask a client why they don't refer more often. And far and away, the number one response when I'm talking to, again, if I'm interviewing a client, the business owner has chosen, that's one of my best relationships, go learn about them. So when I ask that best relationship, why don't you refer more often? The number one response is they look at me and they say, I've never been asked to. And it's hilarious to me because it's like you go back to the owner and say, hey, great news. You paid me a bunch of money to solve a pretty easy problem. You got to start asking for referrals, right? And the owners all say, oh, we do too, talk about it, maybe not a lot. And that's when I say, okay, let me be a client. Ask me. I want to hear it. And that's where they get nervous and shaky and awkward. And normally they say, keep us in mind if you know anybody who needs help. They realize they don't ask. They're very passive about it. So number one, the clients tell me I don't refer because I'm not asked to. They don't ask about it. So then I ask them, well, if you were asked, do you value what the firm does enough for you that you would even take that risk, and recommend them? Because that's a risk if it goes badly. And about 8 out of 10 affirmatively. Yeah, absolutely. So the second most common thing that they tell me, or we really uncover when we interview them, is that they don't truly understand what a good referral would look like for the company that serves them. So I'll ask, if you and I went into a crowded room of people and we had to extract somebody out of that room and hand them to this company, is an ideal new client, the kind of client that they really work to market to and bring in. What are the characteristics of a good new client? And the average client cannot describe that. So we're hoping they find something for us, but they're not even aware of what they're looking for. So the second most common thing, don't know who we want to work with. Number 3, you hit on it, Andy. When I ask them to write me a list of all the services that are available to them from the company that they work with, most of them write a very short list of services. Most of the time, the owner writes a very robust, we do these 30 things. And then I go talk to the client and they're like, yeah, they do these 2 things. It's like, okay, you missed about 85%.
Missing the boat somewhere.
It's a huge disconnect. We assume our clients even understand what we do. They don't. If they don't, we miss out on a lot of referrals simply because their friends have a need, but they don't perceive us as fulfilling it. So nothing happens. Number 4, they always tell me they do refer, and their method is that they give our name and phone number out to people, which is a highly ineffective way to actually refer. So they don't know how to make an introduction occur between professional and prospective client.
That might have been, not to interrupt you, but that might have been one of the most impactful things of everything that you've talked through with us, is that, there could be a lot of people out there. Well, we hear all the time as salespeople that, hey, I gave your name to Joe, my neighbor. Did he ever give you a call? No, when did you give it to him? It was like 6 months ago. And you hear it all the time. And I think a lot of that is because of what you're saying, that people don't know how to refer. They don't know the proper way to refer. And they don't know essentially how to get that person in touch with you. It's not just about saying, hey, you need to talk to, Elliot or Andy. It's about laying that out properly and how to do it.
Completely.
And I think that's so key. And there's a lot of steps you teach in being able to do that very systematically, which I think is impactful. So sorry, not to interrupt the train of thought there, but.
That's okay. And what I would say there, Elliot, is if the owners are watching this is one piece of information, one of those, if you're going to dedicate 20 minutes or whatever and watch something, you want actionable stuff to go use and do. So this to me would be a piece of advice that I've used in every industry I've ever worked in very successfully. Because if you think about what we talked about earlier, that client that said, I gave your name out, why did they do that? Well, they didn't do it because they want Elliot to make more money, or they want Elliot to have a nicer car, or Elliot needs to grow his business. They did it because somebody they care about could utilize Elliot's help to improve their life, right? That's their motivation. But the method they used to get that person help is completely ineffective. And we all know that. But what most business owners and salespeople, what we do, when a client says, hey, Elliot, I gave your name to someone the other day, watch for their phone call. What we say is, hey, thanks, I appreciate that very much.
I'll watch for it.
What we know is that person's never going to call me, right? So I've said the same thing over and over and over again, my whole life in business. When somebody tells me, hey, Dan, I gave your name out to someone the other day, I always say, I appreciate that very much. Can we talk about it for a minute? And they always say, sure. And I say, I'm assuming you did that because somebody that you know or probably care about, you feel like they could use some help or some guidance. Is that accurate? And 100 out of 100 people say yes. And then they normally elaborate. Oh, yeah, we were at dinner the other night and they said this and I told them about you. And I said, here's the problem with that. They don't know and trust us in the same way that you do. As a result of that, reaching out can be a little bit intimidating. It's change, it's different. So as a result, they rarely actually do it. And finally, as a result, they typically don't get help. So if that was the motivation, can we simply talk through a method of introduction where we actually get to meet them or be introduced to them and increase the likelihood that they get help? And if you just say that every single time, you will not believe how many times I gave your name out turns into a conversation, turns into kind of a brainstorming. Hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? And we walk out of that exchange with an action plan for that introduction. And you guys, most salespeople, most owners, when you can get in front of people, your close ratio is high. You're going to get a new client. Getting in front of them is a challenge. So the truth is, Elliot, that when I say, well, you have 1,000 clients, you got 60 referrals last year, why did 940 people not tell anybody about you? A lot of them did. A lot of them did. In fact, we were just part of the biggest study on this topic in North America, and 51% of the people interviewed claimed that they had referred at least one new client in that year to the company that works with them. And the companies reported a 5% referral rate. So think about that. That means 6% of the people that people tried to refer never got help. And 81% of those people said they did it by giving names and phone numbers out. So that, to me, guys, for every owner, is an enormous problem. They got these people out that are raving fans and they're just doing it wrong. And we got to have a conversation to fix that.
Yeah, and Dan, let's maybe stay on that and go a little deeper, just because we could talk about this for hours.
Yeah.
But we want to, as you said, get some actionable stuff out of it. And I know that we were going to keep these to about 20 minutes. We're going a little over, but I think this is really good information for everybody. So one thing that I've noticed with our team that has taken a lot of what you've taught us, the ones that have seen some success with it is going out and training their clients on how to refer. So basically doing what you did there on the reactive side when somebody tells you that, but doing it proactively, which you had talked through quite a bit about. Maybe give us an idea of what people listening to this can do to train their clients on how to give that referral, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you nailed it with the idea of there are two different kinds of referrals. There are reactive and proactive. Reactive means, that they came to us and said, hey, I tried to refer you, or in their mind, they did refer you.
Yeah.
Proactive means that we take the steps before that occurs to educate the client so that when the moment happens, they don't utilize ineffective strategies to help people. So I simply I talk to all the clients that I work with, and I always tell them the same thing. I say, look, the majority of the people that we help come to us because our clients identify people they care about that need help. They end up referring their friends or their family or whatever. And that may happen for you. There may come a time where you're out interacting with somebody and they say or do something that leads you to believe they could use our help. That may never happen, but it may happen. And I simply want to talk about what we do in that moment to make sure those people get help, because I'll tell you what a lot of our clients are inclined to do. They give our name and phone number out, and then I just go through the exact same language. And those people don't know it, so they don't get the help. So I just want to reiterate how important it is in those moments to connect us with those people. And sometimes it's as simple as calling me and saying, hey, I ran into a situation, and together we'll come up with a good way to make an introduction that's comfortable for everybody. But I just condition them early on. Don't give our names and phone numbers out to people if you're trying to be helpful to them, because it just doesn't work. But you notice, Elliot, nothing I said was about me.
Yes.
And growing my business or any of it. It's about being helpful to other people, which again, if you believe you are helpful, all the conversations are not difficult. They're just in the vein of being helpful to people.
Yeah, and I think it's often overlooked from a salesperson standpoint too, that if you're doing a good job and have a good relationship with your client, most times they want to help you too.
Right.
It's just about phrasing it correctly. It's like you said, don't initially make it about you. And they want to, but inherently they want to make you better as well. You know, they want you to succeed, or they probably wouldn't be doing business with you or have a good relationship with you. So I think that's something that is definitely often overlooked in that as well.
And it's the analogy I give is, you know, a good friend of mine is an oncologist, so he treats people with cancer. And if I were in there and I said, oh yeah, my mom has cancer, and he said, well, who's treating her? And I said, oh, nobody, she's not getting any help.
Yeah.
That doctor would never hesitate to say, like, oh, I don't want to come off like a sales guy here. He'd say, get her in here.
Yeah.
She needs treatment, you know,
Right.
But they believe they're helpful to people. They're used to that mentality. And too many business owners started it with a passion of serving people. And then somewhere along the line, they went to these workshops and seminars and got sales baggage. And now they're like, oh, don't talk about wanting to help people. Don't want to look like a sales guy. It's like, that's why you started this, to help. You know?
It's so true. So
it's a fun dialogue, because I think anybody that's watching this, and hopefully people can take away, like, wow, there's a different way to look at the whole psychology around referrals. And so I think that was very cool. I think there's a lot we can actually continue on in this, and maybe another episode of this series, because we do want to be mindful of the time that we put into this. And I think we're probably getting to a decent closing place right now. Wouldn't you agree, Elliot, Dan?
Yeah.
I would say for just 30 seconds, because I had talked about 7 responses and we got to 4. So really quickly, the 5th most common reason they give for not referring is privacy. They feel the nature of the business they do with that company is kind of a private matter, so they don't like talking about whatever that is. 6 is risk. They feel, you know, if I refer and then my friend has a bad experience, then it's my fault, so it's not worth it. That's about 20%, those 2 combined, privacy and risk. And the least common response is that they don't refer intentionally because they've had a bad experience themselves, which means the majority of people, now we interview really good clients, but the majority of them, it's not an issue of have they had a referable experience. It's an issue of has that business engaged them in a meaningful way where not only they're likely to refer, but when they try to, they're effective at doing it. So I want to connect those dots.
Well, yeah, no, thanks for closing that loop, because that does bring it kind of full circle. And it's interesting. Dan is an absolute expert on this, so it's always fun hearing your feedback and your perspective on it. Like we said, there's going to be more of this series coming out. We'll probably even talk a little bit more about this specific topic, because I think there's other things we didn't even cover to this point. Hopefully, if you did watch it all the way through to this point, I'm going to tell you now that wherever you received this from us, you'll have Dan's contact info in there as well. So please reach out to Dan and his team, because again, we've worked with them. They're dynamite. But I want to thank you, Dan, for taking a little bit of your time to share this, and future time when we shoot the next few videos of the series. But other than that, Elliot, I don't know if there's anything you want to add. We can close out for now.
No, I think that's perfect.
Perfect.
Thanks a lot, Dan. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for tuning in.